Hello, NAAIA community. Get ready to relive insightful discussions, gain fresh perspectives, and be inspired by the wealth of knowledge our community has to offer. Let's dive into another episode.
To everyone, good afternoon and welcome. I'm very glad to be in this arena with you today. And so thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which is titled Authentic and Empowered, Thriving as a Black LGBTQIA Plus Professional. I am grateful to hold space for this conversation in the NAAIA community and for the experiences, perspectives, and leadership of Black LGBTQIA professionals across our industry. As we celebrate Pride Month and prepare to observe Juneteenth, we are reminded that progress is often born from the courage of people who insist on being seen and heard and treated with dignity and respect. That spirit, their spirit, continues to inspire the work that we do together. At NAAIA, we often talk about creating access and expanding opportunity and strengthening leadership. At the heart of each of those commitments is a simple belief that people perform at their best when they feel they belong, when individuals are seen and valued and able to bring their full selves to work. We are better positioned to grow, to lead, to innovate, and to contribute. This belief feels especially important today, as we know that the conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging continue to evolve. Organizations are navigating change and pressure from within and outside. And many professionals are asking questions about safety and visibility, authenticity, how all of those connect to each other, and what it means to build a successful career while remaining true to who you are. For Black LGBTQIA plus professionals, those questions often exist at the intersection of multiple identities and experiences. Yet, alongside those challenges are stories of resilience, excellence, community, and leadership, even family, that continue to shape our industry for the better. Today's conversation is not simply about overcoming barriers. It is about thriving. It is about exploring how we navigate our careers with confidence, advocate for ourselves and others, build meaningful professional relationships, and lead authentically in every room we enter. And whether you identify as LGBTQIA+, consider yourself an ally, whether you lead teams or mentor others, or you're simply here to learn, my hope, our hope, is that you leave today's discussion with new insights, practical tools, and a renewed sense of possibility about what it means to be your whole and authentic self. Thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us and for being part of the NAAIA community, committed to supporting the growth and success of Black and African American professionals and our allies across the insurance industry. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dom Oates, Governance and Quality Control Manager at LEAP, who will guide us through what I know will be a thoughtful, engaging, and impactful conversation. As we say here at NAAIA, it's time, let's go. Welcome, Dom. The show is yours.
I'm really grateful for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with the panelists that we have today. I am someone who has been passionate about working with LGBTQ advocacy in all of my professional capacities, and it's been a great privilege to get to know Chris Colthirst and Kendall Glover over the last couple of days to present this discussion. So I welcome them to the stage. I would ask that Chris begin with introducing a little bit about himself and his career so far to kind of give you guys an idea of what environments we're talking about when we share our stories going forward.
Thank you so much, Dom. Excited to be here with everyone and just excited for this conversation. Chris Colthirst, I lead learning for the Hartford's Midland Large Business located here in Hartford, Connecticut. I saw a number of folks from Hartford joining us or close to Hartford in the Connecticut area. So excited to see so many Connecticut folks on the call. Thank you all for joining. I've been in the insurance industry for close to 30 years. I didn't want to say that out loud too much, but excited of that journey and just excited to have this conversation here today. So, Dom, thank you for having me and appreciate you.
Thank you for joining. And Kendall, Director of Sales and Biz Development at Focus Solution. Why don't you share a little bit about your journey here today?
All right. Nice to see everyone. Nice to meet everyone. And unlike Chris, I'm a sharp 4 years into the industry, and I work primarily in the transportation side of the insurance world, working with the independent contractor programs. And overall, really excited to learn more about NAIA. This is my first event, so really excited to be here with everyone and ready to kick off Pride for June. So excited to be here and learning more about everyone else on the call. And you guys get to learn about more about my experience here in Chicago.
Awesome. Well, I love Chicago. It's like one of my favorite cities to visit. I go there for my anniversary annually. But how do you feel expressing yourself authentically and in an empowered way in your current professional capacity in your job at Chicago or at previous locations that you've worked at?
Yeah, I would say for me, I kind of work on I would say on one of the far sides of the spectrum of people's views, especially working in transportation. And I think for me, living authentically, I try to just navigate the world, just focusing on being a good person, allowing people to connect with me first before I, let them open up and learn more about me because I think that a lot of times people are looking for differences. So I think that the first opportunity you have to make that connection is just as person to person. That's been like a key way for me to be able to be authentic and especially in my work environment.
I love that. And Chris, how do you feel? I mean, I feel like we didn't want to talk about 30 years plus, but I do want to hear your perspective on how that has, been for you, how to be authentic and empowered. Maybe it's changed over the years.
It's an amazing thing to celebrate. So I welcome to talk about it. And thank you for the question. I've been very fortunate to build my career in an environment like the Hartford, that I am right now, where learning, development, and people are truly valued. My career path has mostly centered around helping others grow. Um, and what I mean by that, I, most of the journey that I've had was really helping people grow their careers, to create opportunities for them. When you're in a learning space, you're really helping people create access and opportunities. So I've been very, very fortunate for that. For me, being authentic and empowered means showing up, right? It means showing up consistently as who I am, not just when it's easy, right? That's easy to do, but especially in spaces where it may feel uncomfortable. Early in my career, I actually received advice that showing up as my authentic self, especially as a member of the LGBTQ plus AI, LGBTQ plus community member, might not be the best business decision. That stuck with me for a while, down to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it definitely shaped how I showed up early on in my career. Over time, my perspective shifted, and I come to believe that empowerment isn't really about having all the answers. Um, it's about having the confidence to ask questions, right? Challenge perspectives. And of course, one of the things for me is just create space for others to do the same. So for me, um, really, it's really about showing up more authentically now. And authenticity and empowerment goes hand in hand.
Mhm.
So you can't fully lead others if you're not grounded in your own voice, and that voice has to be authentic. So,
Yeah, I can relate to that advice. I got similar advice earlier in my career. I feel like people are trying to look out for you when they're giving you that advice, but sometimes it's, to a detriment. Kendall, you mentioned how you work in a community that may be not as open to certain experiences. Can you share a time where you maybe had to stand up for yourself and or for somebody else even and made a difference in their career or your own?
Yeah, I think it I think it plays a little bit more into just like the overall openness that some people have. And I think that when, if it's a certain population of people, as soon as they hear, LGBTQ plus IA, they're immediately turned off. And I think that from like my experience, I always, try to connect with the person, find some way to connect them. I'm also in sales, so that's one of my skill sets. And then I decide when's the right time to slide that, this part of me about there when it's appropriate and when it makes sense. And I think that that's also like a big key area where I think that not everyone needs to feel like you need to bring it up like within the first few words of like an interaction. First, try to get to know the person, ask them a few questions, and then when it feels right, I think that that's been one of my like, key ways I've been able to navigate that world and have like a really positive experience. But I mean, I think that for me, there's also not that many people that also look like me. So on top of being like the LGBTQ plus IA, I think that whenever you see someone that does look like you or see someone that might not have like the same type of role that you have, the same type of network, try to talk to them, try to, be their ally in that world. And I think that when you're feeling confident, try to pass that confidence on to someone that feels like, they should might have shared a similar experience. And I think that's helped me live authentic in the world I'm in today.
No, I love that, especially because I feel like when Chris and I probably got similar advice, it was for somebody who, for me, they saw something. We came
Yeah.
into the office, they saw something about me that was kind of like, hey, you might want to tone that down a little bit. But there was also, like, to Chris's point, that moment where somebody saw something and pulled me into the conversation and accepted me more. And I think that made a difference in my mindset going forward. Chris, you talked about how you had that shift. Do you have like a aha moment where you felt that authenticity really bring you forward and change your mindset, or did you have someone from your community who was able to like reach out to you and kind of bring you in that context?
Yeah, so I love this question because was very fortunate, and I've really been fortunate to have some amazing leaders, um, especially in the last 10 years, that really have helped in my career growth. And I'll tell a real quick story. I was at dinner one time with a leader whom I was reporting to, and she just, two of us were sitting having a conversation, and she just quietly leaned in and said, "Why don't you ever talk about your partner?" You know what I mean? It was just a quiet conversation that just allowed a free flowing of conversation. And it was at that moment that it was like there was a release, and I just let it go, and we had a conversation. And I have to say, ever since then, I feel that I was able to be more authentic in the workplace, in my community, with leaders. And it was at that moment that I saw a change in just my work product. My work product got better. My relationships with the people I work with got better because of that authenticity. And because I was starting to use my voice, it really helped me to see things clearer. And it was really just a great way to really jumpstart me, the professional person that I am. So I will say this. Um, I thanked her for the voice that she used, and I will always be grateful for that she did that. And it was just, again, a quiet conversation that just said, "You're seen, I see you, I hear you. You don't have to be afraid to share. Be comfortable sharing, be comfortable being your authentic self." And because of that, my work product got so much better, and I became a better employee and just a better person altogether for that.
I love that because I feel like your coworker saw something in that moment that
Mhm.
really just needed to be like honored and nurtured and cared for. Like, hey, share with me about your life. I want to know
Yeah.
more about you. I love that. And Kendall, do you feel like you've had like a community building experience? I know for me in when I worked previously was in manufacturing, not in insurance. So I had a moment where somebody that I thought was clearly out for a long time told me that me coming out made them come out in the office. And it was like, oh, well, the closet was glass, honey. But thank you for telling me that. But Kendall, do you have a similar kind of experience with building community within the workspace revolving your identity?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, it's not, I mean, I would say to me, it's like a, 90% likelihood you should know, my preferences based off of meeting me. But a lot of other people, I guess it's like a, 25, 50%. So I like to, whenever I'm in a group scenario, I'm confident enough that through my experiences, like I can immediately off the bat say I'm in a long-term relationship with my partner. And I think being able to hear, like you guys have had your experiences, if you have the confidence, I think that you should be able to put it out there. And then if it impacts someone, that's where the real change happens because not everyone has like the same experiences, the same ability to kind of like find their voice, and maybe they don't feel comfortable saying it. Maybe they never will feel comfortable saying it, but just to give that moment, like, space and for that to just at least internally, like, maybe that wasn't so bad when they did it. Maybe at some point, if I feel good, I can do it. So I think that that's been, key through my life, previously and in insurance now.
But I'm sure that that came with some challenges. I mean, being open, have you had like any microaggressions or uncomfortable moments that you've had to work through?
100%. So, little story time. I would say, one of my clients, they invited me to Chris Stapleton in Nashville, which was like, great event, big city, really amazing time. 2 weeks later, I got invited to another event, which was a Kid Rock music festival in Alabama. And so that was just one of those things where internally I was just like, I'm busy this weekend. And it's just, some people just really just don't have a lens as to like what your experiences are. Plus, these people know that I am also gay and also very black, and those don't really, mesh with his views that much. But I think that, sometimes you just have to really just, choose when you want to kind of force this person's ideas, because if they have blinders on, they're gonna have blinders on. That's okay. And I think you have to be comfortable with that. My background also I grew up a Jehovah Witness, so I'm also used to just having like very separate views. So I think that through that experience, it's also helped me kind of like just figure out how to navigate everything.
For sure. I would love to ask Chris this question because I also am like really curious about how maybe the microaggressions have changed over time. I don't know what I don't know what was it back in the 90s. No, I'm kidding.
There are a lot of those, right? A lot of those. But one of the things that I do when I'm really faced with microaggressions is really there's this framework that I've been using, and it has helped me over the last couple years. And it's just a simple framework that I think can help folks on here too, because we all encounter it in our daily lives. And one of the things is I just kind of really center myself and say, really, can you say more about that? So if someone is coming at me in a way that is not the right way, I'm going to ask them that question. Can you just say a little bit more about that? This just invites more of a reflective, you know, um, conversation. A reflective tone really invites reflection without, going into some type of escalation. Another thing that I do is I'll just say, want to share more about that because somehow it just didn't land well for me,
Yeah,
right? Another way that just kind of helps keep it, personal but non-accusatory because people get a little bit offended when you call them out on their microaggressions that they use, and those are some of the things that I try to do to help it. But over the years, I have seen a lot of it and experienced a lot of it, but I really try to about intent versus impact. And that is so important to me because you can acknowledge that something may not have been intended the way that it came, while still, very, very important, while still being clear about the impact of it, right? So we can acknowledge again that something may not have been the way it was intended, but it's really, really critical that we are clear about the impact, and that impact is what impacts us in our day to day. And sometimes it's about just choosing the right moment, addressing it in real time if needed, or just following up one on one. And that really is important.
does the does the response change for you when the community changes? For example, there's a difference in reaction when you're, in your white, predominantly white workspace versus the intent and impact when you're with somebody that looks like you, but you're still kind of feeling this otherness in these spaces. I know we talked about that before, separately from this. Do you feel like you come approach our community with more care, or do you get a different type of experience within our community as regards to our queer identity?
Was that for me? You want me to
Yes.
respond?
Oh, actually, honestly, but both of you, whoever wants, and I'll let Chris go first because he was
Okay,
No, no
good.
problem. Yeah, that is such that's such a good question and a good point. I don't feel that I make a different judgment based on the various communities that we engage with, because again, that impact is can sting no matter who is doing the microaggression. So I don't know if there's a difference in how I react versus the different communities. There are times where I sometimes feel or maybe I expect a little bit more care from my own communities, right? Um, so I maybe there's a part of me that desire that a little bit more, and maybe I probably put our community on a higher pedestal because I think that we all face some microaggressions in some form or fashion. So hopefully that it's that the care is a little bit softer. We think about our community a little bit more, but I don't believe that it varies. Kendall, I don't know if you have a different thought.
Yeah, I would say for me especially, rolling on the other side of the spectrum with 4 years into insurance, I'm usually one of the, younger people, and I have like a 14-year-old face that I'm trying to grow out of since I just hit 30 last weekend. And I would say that the biggest difference is a lot of times, I'm not really sure why this is, but I think that I'm sure everyone here has run into it when people don't really engage with like a lot of, Black people or LGBTQ people. They, of course, want to ask, immediate questions, have some assumptions. And a lot of times, like, I've had to just kind of like, because people look at me, they think about, the life that I have and like my experience, and they want that to be like a benchmark to why everyone else is not, doing the same exact thing. And I have to basically give them like an educational, breakdown of like why that is a wrong way to think. And I think that's like the biggest difference for me is like I feel like on one side of the spectrum, I'm doing a lot of more like educational to tell you like this is why that does not make sense because they truly just don't get it. And then on the
Yeah.
other side, it's more of like a hey, like, you know, we know what's going on here. It's a little more like relatability of like, being able to like how are you navigating that? Like what are your tips? And I think that that's kind of like the biggest difference is even if, maybe like my community hasn't been, overall sometimes they're not blanket accepting, there's still like a core relatability that like it's still different than like feeling like I'm truly educating. So I
Yeah,
would say
you're not starting from zero with it.
that.
You're like, okay, you know how this feels?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I feel like you gave us some practical instructions there. You're educating people on both your community and as well as providing them an opportunity to ask questions kind of in a safe space, which, you're not obligated to do that in every situation, but I do find myself when I'm in the Black community more willing to just be a listener and be a provider of context clues or insight for whatever they might have questions on. So you mentioned how people look at what you've achieved and they kind of start building their own success framework based off of that. Do you feel like you've had to realign what your definition of success is over the years, or do you feel like it's congruent with another white straight male at your at your age? Do you have different definitions of success?
Yeah, I would say that mine is like I benchmark myself off of like just me. But I think that, everyone that looks like us, we have to, put in that extra work to get there. So I think that me having to put in that extra work, if I were to be benchmarked against people my age, I should be above them because, that's what we want to do. We want to work hard, we want to get above them, and we want to be, equal and above. And I think that's where I sit now. And I think that from having like my experiences and being like able to kind of navigate the world because not everyone can handle the things that we have to deal with, microaggressions and all these things. Not everyone can just sometimes let that, take you off the mission. So if you
Mm,
can, still focus on the mission and deal with some things, like I'm trying to go as high as possible. So I would say that's where I feel about, that question.
for sure. And I kind of want to pivot to Chris and ask, how have you modeled your success based off of leadership? Has there been anybody that you've been able to look up to, or how have you changed your version of success
Yeah,
based,
I think
who's
that's such an amazing question. I really like it because as I think back, right, many times I did early on in my career, I did model success based on really what I didn't see, right? I saw a particular image of success and I modeled it on that. But I always desired to see myself in that role. And I never really saw myself because, again, predominantly white male in the insurance industry, right? So I never really saw myself being successful because I didn't see myself in those successful roles, right? Very, very few times I saw, you know, a people of color in, high leadership role. So there was a desire to see that. And then as I started seeing it, it's like a dream. Wow, this dream is possible, right? You can be successful and be a person of color. And on top of that, be a member of the LGBTQIA community, right? So I am really, really thankful that we are now in this space and time where we are able to see advancement. It's still so small, but we really need to see more of it. And that's why I'm excited for this conversation because here we have three amazing people of color. We're successful in our careers right now. There's still room for us to grow, but we're having a conversation. We're being loud and proud, and we're celebrating our authenticness with close to another 100 folks on a call here today. So, this to me is success, and I'm so happy that we're here. If this is the top, the mountaintop, then I am so excited because we are celebrating this together during Pride Month, and we're all here together. So this is just
yeah,
great.
a great
I will throw in there really quick while I'm here.
yeah.
I will say one money hack that I do that I've even had to like, coach my mom on is if you're not getting paid more than 25% every 2 years at your job, you need to leave. So I think just also being comfortable if they're not properly moving you up financially, walk away and leave. You'll at least get a sign-on bonus. You'll at least get a marginal increase. So just don't feel uncomfortable about having to restart because everyone else is doing it.
Oh my gosh, such good advice. Could have used that probably 4 years ago at least. I mean, I was in manufacturing for so long, and I think that kind of goes to like the next thing I want to ask, and we'll start with Kendall, but I want each of you to answer it, is that when that moment comes where you have to advocate for yourself, there's that little nagging voice that tells you, hey, maybe you don't deserve this, or somebody else might deserve it. What have you done to kind of quiet that voice and choose to affirm yourself, or what strategies have you had to affirm yourself in moments like that?
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm a big, person that just tries to look at who's around me that's successful. And if I'm unsure about, if I can't, think of like a good way to kind of like, get through it, I'll look to see, okay, who's successful around me. I'm just gonna ask every single person, what they think of this process. And then depending on how everyone answers, if it's all similar, here's the thing, no one really knows exactly what to do. It's just if you have someone and you like their results that they're, living their life, that's probably a good person just to ask, even if they don't even know exactly, what the right answer is. So I think that being comfortable asking people that you like how they seem to have their life experience and whatever that looks like, ask all those people, and then it's just more sounding boards for you to go off of. And a lot of times, most people have been in your same position. So even when like I got this role, like one of my best friends, like he's also in sales, and he's like, oh, like my dad like helped me, with this process of like knowing how to kind of position it properly. And it was like basically he's one of my best friends where I talk to him every single day, and he was like, hey, you're giving them like really big deals right now. This is where you need to position and ask for this promotion. And that's, the timeline lined up to where how I got my promotion. So I think just finding those people that you trust as a sounding board, and like they're also going to be able to help you. But I also think that if you are that person and someone's going through, the working world, try to be that person to them, check in with them and say, hey, how's work going? So I think that empowering people and then also trying to figure out ways to empower yourselves are, my biggest points there.
That's awesome, Kendall. I totally agree with everything that you said. And the only thing I'll just add is for me early on, again, I measured success against what I saw modeled around me, but not always, again, seeing myself reflected in that leadership, in that success. And that made it very, very difficult for a long time. But over time, again, I have redefined success more personally for me. And it's really, am I creating an impact, right? That's so important to me. What is the impact that I'm creating? And this is how I'm defining success in my life and experiences. Um, am I creating an impact? Am I growing and helping others grow? That is very, very important to me that everything that I do is helping myself and others get to the next place, the next journey. And am I showing up in a way that aligns with really and truly who I am? So um, I'll say representation matters, for those of us who are in position of helping someone come along the way. I encourage you to do it because representation does matter. And the more we see each other, the more we see ourselves reflected in each other, the better we'll all be. But in the absence of it, right, where it's not there, you sometimes have to become the example that you were looking for. And that is my goal every day when I walk into my workplace, when I, answer an email, when I meet with anyone, it's am I being that example of who I was looking for? So that's just when I think about success at this stage in my career, that those are the things that really come to light for me.
I love that you mentioned looking at people, kind of finding that person to look up to, determining that sex. For me, as a queer woman, this is kind of funny, but Queen Latifah used to be that for me. You know what I mean? We love Queen Latifah. And but growing up, I remember she was not loud and queer. And that was something that like stuck with me personally because to me, it looked like you, in order to be successful, you couldn't be loud about it. You could be there, it could be there, we could see it, but we couldn't talk about it because that's a private thing. I think she's a private person. Shout out to Queen Latifah. I don't want any beef with her. But I think as I grew up, I realized that I wanted to emulate myself after people that were just more loud and authentic and with their queerness in particular. And so then, of course, Lady Gaga and her amazing performance like really spoke to me. And I want to kind of go back to Kendall for a second. When we were talking about, um, you know, finding people in spaces to connect with, do you have specific like professional strategies for ensuring that people aren't being disenfranchised or looked to the side? Like when you're in these boardrooms and you're speaking with people and advocating on behalf of your queerness, are there certain things that you fall back on to kind of bring a different perspective into that conversation of how somebody might be impacted or then they didn't consider it before?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think that for like majority of my but I would say majority of like all of my interactions in like the like working world, I usually just it's almost like as like let's say you're like okay, let me give you an example. Let me get it cooking really quick. Okay, you're like, hey Kendall, like let's go to, this like post-work event. We have a dinner. We're going to Epcot and like you come and say, okay, well, I'm gonna actually getting dinner with like my partner and another client, and like it's just more of like I introduce it as like seamless conversation and
Yes.
not more of like me just like an announcement. And I think that for me, I work in sales, so I'm always, working with a wide range of like people. I basically just like incorporate it as it's like it's a normal part of life, and I don't make it like a focal point of the conversation. I just make it almost like has the same weight if they were sharing about, where they're getting dinner, who they're getting dinner with. I just make it almost, as similar of a conversation to where it just makes it seem like okay, we're actually the same. Sure, like they're a little bit different because they're part of the LGBTQ plus A, but at our core, we're both getting dinner with our partners at a work event. So I think
Yeah,
that's been my thing.
totally. Like I can relate to that. I feel like I have to come out 4 times. I feel like when I'm talking to people, I there's definitely different levels of queerness, and it's like I have to say, I'm non-binary, I'm polyamorous, I'm pansexual. I have to like slip it in casually, else have to way. Yes, both of my partners will be at this work event. Chris, is do you have any strategies when you're in the office for really just creating a space of inclusivity for your coworkers?
I do. I went to a conference, maybe it was last year, and there was this little rainbow light that I was given, and I every day when I come in, I light that rainbow light so that it's a visible sign of a safe space for anyone, right? So that rainbow light to me is my guide. I tell my folks it's my little bat signal. When I'm in
Yeah,
the office, it's on, right? So you know that Chris is here, and
yeah.
there's a little bit of joy that comes with that. Um, every day, I want to create space where people feel welcomed, invited, and feel like they belong, and that is so critical to me. So I try every single interaction, everything that I do to allow everyone to feel that connectivity, to feel connected, because that is so critical. Um,
Mhm.
you know, we we have it hard. It's tough out there, right? The environment is tough right now. Um, turn on our TVs, we're just overwhelmed with just the actions of each day, and sometimes it can bring you down. And I truly believe every day when I come into work and I light that light, it's like my hope, my joy that really comes through. So if you ever come to the Hartford office and you come to my desk, if you see that little rainbow light on, you know that I'm there. And that is just a way of just saying, hey, this is a safe space. This is a place where you can come and feel comfortable. This is a place, this is someone who, if you need to grab a coffee and have a conversation with, then let's do it because I want to be that safe space. And I hope if anyone is listening and you can be that safe space for someone in your office, please do. Even if it's just Pride Month, you put a little rainbow flag somewhere around just to show that you are safe, you're an ally, you're someone that someone can come to and talk and just have a cup of coffee. Even if it's just wearing a little rainbow pin during the month, just do something small to just help someone feel that they have connection, they have someone that they can have a conversation with.
I think that's so important, especially for the queer community, because unlike blackness, we typically don't wear it out in public. And so being queer is a series of elaborate clues for a lot of people for a long time. I mean, before the pride flag, we can go into a little bit of queer history. I'm sure if you choose an identity, spin the wheel, they all had a way of meeting each other in public spaces and identifying that they were queer with clothing choices, with small things. A star tattoo on their wrists meant that they were a lesbian, which piercing they had on the ear. Some of the things were taken and used to ostracize us, but they were initially these tools of, finding these connectedness and creating a safe space without making a big fuss about it. Like, hey, here, you can trust me. I'm here to, help you out. I found that early in my career, that was something that happened a lot with trans women. I worked with a lot of trans women, and making sure that I had a little pin that said, I will go with you, to show support. Like, hey, if you need to go to the bathroom and feel protected in the bathroom, I will come with you and just stand outside the stall and chat with you, whatever you need. Um, so that's wonderful. I love the
And and I'll just add to that. Imagine, when we are out in public, no matter what community you're part of, and you see something that allows you to feel comfortable, to feel connected, whether it's a restaurant and a sign at the door at a restaurant that says, okay, if you see a rainbow or you see any symbolism that shows connectivity to a community, then it's just like there's a relief that you get, and you say, okay, I feel seen in here. I can go here. This makes me feel comfortable. So I think that's part of it, even in the workplace, where we can use symbols to help people feel safe. And I love what Kendall says, that sometimes it's just gradually indicating. It doesn't have to be loud, but you can just simply say, you know what, I'm going my partner to dinner tonight. And sometimes that is so powerful, right? And I try to just drop that ever so often. When going on vacation, someone will say, if they don't know that I'm a part of the community, they'll say, "Oh, you're going on vacation?" I say, "Yeah, my partner and I are going here. We're doing this." Gradually, and it forms connection, and it does allow a better conversation. You just feel like a little bit of relief. So
Yeah. No, you definitely do. There's like a knowingness. I mean, I feel like we have it similarly when we're Black and we code switch, or we have those moments of like we're in the office and it's like you make a side eye and you're like, oh my gosh, only we saw each other have that moment. But uh,
connection,
intersectionality allows you to have those experiences with like a wider range of
powerful,
people. Yes.
and they're so powerful. We should not dismiss that.
And when you're being your true self and you're in these rooms, you have to like pause and appreciate those moments too, because we haven't always been given a chance to have that freedom. Kendall and I are the same age. So I mean, Kendall, you've spoken in the area that you live in is a little bit more uh different. I was in Midwest. It's like, you're on the East Coast, Chris, so we're in the Midwest. It's a little bit less accepting sometimes. Have there been moments where you've had to pause and reset and think about your well-being in general, not necessarily um just what's going to make this most professional in that moment, but am I safe? Have there been moments where you've had to consider your safety in your professional career?
I would say probably. I would say the answer is yes, but I think that by, working in sales and like always encountering a wide range of people, you almost have to like give yourself like a protective helmet and like not like especially with like the industry that I work in, if I were to basically kind of like think about every single thing that every person said, like it would probably mentally just like, destroy me. So I think that like one of my key things is like I'm a very big advocate for like meditation and not letting someone like rally you up. And I do like guided meditations on Spotify. And if I really, mid conference or mid anything, I'm just like, okay, we'll do a quick 5 minute, let the mind walk itself down, and then we're back into it. But I think it's more of just like finding those times for you to just not let someone have like that power over you. And if, almost the same way how some people have blinders on when they don't really understand something, you almost have to sometimes have blinders on yourself to say, okay, they didn't really probably intend to, want to hurt my feelings or want just to have like a not positive reaction. And you kind of decide whether you want to like either like, have time today or if you don't have time today. But I think in a lot of work scenarios, like the time is never worth it unless they're signing your checks. That's my motto is, are they signing my check? No? Okay, well, you can say your 2 words and then I might not ever have to speak to you again and we'll move on. And that's been kind of like, especially, you and me, like we're younger, so we don't have as much, probably navigating these experiences like Chris has. But, that's been, I would say my key factors there.
Yeah, Chris, same question for you.
um, yeah, I love the way Kendall kind of phrased it, right? It's really focusing on the things that's most important, right? When some of those come around, and focus on the big picture. I love what he said really about just, you know what? The check, you're not signing my check, then you guess what? I'm not gonna let you ruin my day. I'm not going to let you impact my life. But I understand it's hard. Our well-being is so critical. And that is something that I'm still really even learning and actively working on. Like, how do I make sure that, I'm pausing and resetting, I'm thinking about my well-being, especially this day and time. And a lot of times we equate success and growth with just taking on more, doing more, and not thinking of moments when we just need to pause, reflect, and think about our own well-being. And I'm glad that Kendall kind of talked a little bit about that because I think that's so critical. Part of your well-being is not letting a lot of the outside influence penetrate your space and penetrate your heart and mind. So, I've learned that it's tough, right? And sometimes those things do hurt. You know what I mean? Those little microaggressions do hurt. And you know, there is opportunity. Sometimes we just have to pause, reflect, think about impact versus intent, and just making sure that we're advocating for our own well-being at all time. And that isn't necessarily it should not let us feel like advocating for ourselves and our well-being means that we're stepping back from success or stepping back from growth. But it's just a moment of just saying, hey, I matter, I come first, and that is so critically and important. So
And I think most people you ask who are successful have a strategy for their mental health. I mean,
exactly.
it's not a coincidence that Mental Health Awareness Month is right before Pride. It's like you take a month to think about yourself and then you can kind of chill and relax and party and celebrate who that is, who you determine that to be. And I think as a queer person, I was forced to prioritize my mental health. I think a lot of us have that experience where we didn't want to prioritize it. And then it got to a point where, hey, actually, you don't have a choice because your mental health is going to prioritize you now. And
Correct.
you're going to be working. Do you guys want to speak to, Chris, you want to start speaking to that? And then Kendall, I'll let you follow up.
Explain a little bit more what the question that you're asking. Just
Oh,
what
sorry,
was
about like moments where you've had to invest into your mental health, like that moment where you've made that active
absolutely.
decision to like invest in your rest and make sure that you're blocking these haters and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I people can't really get to me too bad. So I don't have too many haters, I hope, unless I just don't notice now.
No, no haters for Chris.
No haters for here, right? But yeah, I think it's just a deliberate thing that we all have to do to make sure that we take time to think about our mental health. One of the things that I have learned is that I'll say this, it might be controversial in a group as such as NAAIA, but everyone needs a good therapist, right? Everyone should have someone that they can connect with. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that therapist is someone that is a paid professional, but it could be a close friend that you can have a conversation with. It could be that family member that you can sit, have coffee with, and you have the opportunity to unload, share, and really have that moment of just conversation. Everyone should have someone that they can connect with, that they can talk with. My partner is a therapist, so I always advocate for therapy, you know. But it's just so critical, and I think that that is something that we lack in our community because it's often a stigmatism, right? Like, hey, we don't need it; it's not for you, and especially those who are of religious faith, that also is a barrier to us getting the help sometimes that we need. Don't send me any hate mail. I'm just speaking what's truth. But it is sometimes a barrier for people. So I encourage everyone, do what you need to do for your own mental health, for your own well-being. It's critical. Do not just let things go unnoticed. Find that therapist, find that friend, call Chris. I am always willing to be a listening ear for anyone who needs it because that is critical. And we have to take the time to do that. We have to take the time because, again, a lot of times as professionals, we think we just got to keep going. We cannot stop. We can't show that we are in need of help. But to your point, the most successful people prioritize their health, prioritize their mental health, and take it as number one priority so that they can be successful for everyone that they are either leading or people that they are working with.
I mean, you're spot on. I definitely am, one of the most qualified and a person that definitely should have a therapist, but I do not have a therapist. That was actually one of my New Year's resolutions was to get a therapist because it's been, it's a little bit of a stigma and it's kind of hard to just, fully commit to that. So I was hoping by the end of this month I would find one and start off with just, one of those apps like Better Space, or, Headspace, and just at least start virtually and then kind of build my way up. So I can't really say that, I'm doing therapy specifically. Otherwise, I'd be lying. Don't want to lie to my fam here. But I would say for me, primarily what I do is like I'm a hardcore like meditator. If I'm any type of emotion, if I'm sad, if I'm angry, if I need to just kind of control how I'm feeling, I do the meditation. I go to the gym, every single day. And I also make sure that I get, people don't always remember this. Make sure you get your sleep. Get your 8 to 10 hours of sleep. If you're not well rested, you're gonna be crabby. So as soon as someone says one thing to you, you're gonna snap. So if you're well rested, you go to the gym. If you don't have time for a therapist yet, those things help too.
Awesome.
No, I think that's been a huge theme of this whole conversation is just community and the ways that community just honestly builds you up, and you cannot be successful on your own. You need that support system, and that support system can look like a lot of different things. And I hope that people listening to us talk understood that that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be part of the LGBT community. Anybody could have done these things for Chris, Kendall, or I. Anybody could have sat and listened to us talk about what we were struggling with as we were starting our career, and provided support. So I think if we had to pick your top two favorite ways to you've been allied to or have allied others, we'll close the meeting with that. Well, I'll give for me, I think my top way I've been allied to was being invited to the women's rugby team in high school. That was the most allied thing anybody's ever done for me, and it opened my queerness up amazingly. I met so many queer, wonderful women, strong Black women that can tackle and do so much, but have also taught me about myself. So inviting people into queer spaces has been a way that I have been shown allyship. So I'll ask Chris and Ken to share, and then Kendall's close.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And celebrate our allies, right? Those people who really, you know, reach across the aisle. I'll say just reach out. I've been fortunate, like I said, I had that leader who just sat at that quiet dinner and asked that question, and that was just such an amazing ally moment for me. But I'll just share this with those listening. I really believe the most meaningful allyship that I've experienced across, the many years, professionally and personally, is just a couple of things that I think allies do that I encourage everyone that wants to be a good ally. You should definitely think about consistency, right? Not just doing Pride Month. We can do and say we're allies and wear the pins and put up that rainbow, but all the time or just making sure that you're very consistent with that allyship in moments when the community needs you. Stand up, use your voice, help us, because again, we are all one community. So consistency, advocate in rooms where we are not. So that's one of the things that I found that some of my allies did. So I encourage you to advocate for our community. Just be curious and listen, right? Ask thoughtful questions and don't make assumptions. It's okay to ask questions. We welcome questions, right? And let's have conversations. Conversations lead to so much more connectivity than most people realize. And then, of course, as an ally, use your voice. I've been so fortunate for ally who have used their voice. And again, I'll say always talk about that moment in the restaurant where someone used their voice to help me feel comfortable was just a pivotal moment in my um, professional journey.
Thank you so
And
much,
you don't
Chris.
have to be perfect. Allies, you do not have to be perfect.
No.
Kendall, go ahead.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you said. I would say for me, like my experience has been, always being around the right people who have pushed me to just, push me to where I'm at today. And I'm always will forever be grateful to those people. But and I think that for me, offering that back to everyone, I think that even if, there's always like, the cookie cutter person that's just like, hey, he has a nice smile, he laughs, like he's, I'm what you call like, what is it like? I'm like a palatable black person. And, there's a lot of other people just because they're not like super friendly, maybe they're a little angry all the time. That doesn't mean they don't deserve allyship. And you also have to think that maybe they've had an experience that got them to that position. So sometimes you kind of have to peel back the onion a little bit just to kind of like work through that to people. And I would say for me, I try to make sure I push people to be allies for people that don't just, look like me and have had my experience, be an ally for everyone. And I think that, every person that's able to kind of, be in whatever box that you fall in, don't let the allyship just stop with your box. Make the allyship hit all the boxes.
I love that. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you guys. My first NAAIA panel, our first NAAIA panel together. I thank you, everybody who was talking. I'm going to ask Ashley to close us out.
Chris, Kendall, thank you so much for sharing your stories. If you were following the chat while you all were speaking, so many people thought this was an amazing conversation and feel seen and heard through your experiences that you shared with us so transparently. So it's really important. I was taking notes and writing, and some of the final thoughts that in the beginning you talked about how putting yourself first really helped you in your career because from Chris's perspective, made him a better person, made his work better, and ultimately he showed up better for everyone by putting himself first. The other thing came from Kendall, where he talked about really just choosing to use his discernment for the emotional weight of navigating this industry, which kicked off a deeper conversation about mental health, which is so very important for this space. And so thank you all for that. I see the chat running up at how everyone enjoyed this conversation. With that, I'll close from a NAAIA perspective. We have some upcoming wonderful events this particular month. We've got our Juneteenth webinar on June 18th. We hope to see you there. We'll have our Agent Roundtable on July 7th. And then let's not forget about our Summit Series, which is going to run through the end of July into August. And then we're going to run up to conference, which we will be in Charlotte this year. And so thank you all for everything. We will close out now. You all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching this flashback episode with NAAIA. We appreciate your time and hope you found the insights valuable. Stay tuned for more enriching content. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the NAAIA community.